startup grind in general is that you bring out these random people that have random businesses, but then somehow flourish. And you, that one person, you have this unique idea, and you obviously want to learn from someone like Tafadzwa, and eventually comes to the point of which your business or your idea comes to be something that is actually a baby, so to say. It becomes a baby, matures, and then eventually starts walking, starts growing. Obviously the money starts going away. It's a baby. And eventually you start to see, obviously, this is the evolution of your business, or this is the evolution of your idea. And one thing that I can tell you today is we're going to learn a lot. We have Michelle here, who is the co-director and also be the photographer and videographer. That's her at the back. And then, without further ado, we have Kachara. She is also the director. She currently has a postgrad in entrepreneurship, business management, and is also currently doing her master's in business management at the University of Free State. And she also has her own business, Mariye Nenekazi. It's a unique online boutique store. If you obviously want to check it out, it's amazing. I've seen it myself. I've bought a few products. Hopefully buy more. And Kuma, can you please join us, please? Can you please give a round of applause? And one thing I know about IP is most recently our president introduced the Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission. And for those of you who don't know, obviously now this means that South Africa is moving forward into avenues such as IP, and obviously more into how information and communication technology can improve how we move forward in general. So most of you might probably have 4G or LTE. Eventually there'll be something called 5G. Well, I don't know what it is, all I know is it's faster internet. But that is for certain going to happen, and within the Fourth Industrial Revolution, being the forefront is IP. And for it being intellectual property, you as a person that has a business, obviously will need this avenue to know very well that when your business is obviously set, you'll need someone to help you and assist you in making sure that you know that your property is your own. And within it being your own, you actually know how to check out all the different avenues and so forth. Unfortunately, the gentleman that has joined us, who is obviously the man of the night, the guest of honor, he is he's a lawyer. First things first, he's a lawyer, and he also holds a biochemistry as well as a microbiology degree, BSc more specifically from NMU, as well as also an LLB from NMU. I think you really love that university, that's for sure. And then now he's currently working for the university as an intellectual property, if I'm not mistaken, and transfer analyst. Was. He is his own boss, so it's better doing it that way. And now currently, obviously, he has founded Kachara Incorporated. And since its inception, obviously now he's obviously provided so much consulting for so many other different businesses, and obviously he tries his best to see if startups will require the specific knowledge that he currently holds. And more specifically, one thing that I hope to learn from you tonight is, one thing my mother always told me, Tapo, try to make sure that when you do start studying, study something that will make sure that you have your own business. So I want to obviously see as to how did you actually get to see very well that, okay, I can study that, but then eventually I can go into my own passion. And well, fortunately, we will see how you actually found to see that passion. Thank you, Tafadzwa.
Thank you so much, Tafadzwa. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You have me so far. We get started.
Yeah.
So I suppose, in a way, going to, okay, nice, okay. I guess in a way, I'm probably going to disappoint Tabo, in a sense, because he's very keen to hear about how it started and where it started. But growing up, I wasn't raised in a very entrepreneurial environment, in an entrepreneurial home. I grew up in Zim. And the one thing that was hammered into us, me and my siblings, was you need to do good in school, get amazing grades, get a good job, and start working. So I think from the onset, the idea was to be a good employee. That is what I was set out to do. Getting to become a business person and running a business and being involved in this whole entrepreneurial area, it sort of like came up by chance as a cause of circumstances that were prevailing at that particular moment. But I suppose that's why we're here. It's something that we're going to talk about in that.
Cool. So you're telling us you were born and bred in Zone, and now you're in South Africa. So obviously we want to know, how did you get here? It's a different country, you're doing so well. So what led to you coming to South Africa?
All right, so as I've alluded to just a moment ago, grew up in Zim, studied in Zim, A-level, up to A-level. So the education system in Zim is slightly different to South Africa, because what we do is we have the primary school, which is grade 1 to 7, just the same as here. Then after that you get into high school. So for us we do Form 1 and Form 2, which is like the equivalent of grade 8 and grade 9 in South Africa. Then at that point you're doing like generalized stuff, you're doing what everybody else is doing. It's like the same 8, 10 or 12 subjects depending on which school you're at. Then after the Form 2, which is like equivalent of grade 9, there is like a streaming process that is done, right? The top of the students are put into A class, the middle students B class, then the rest of the students in the C class. And the streams are divided in 3. So the first class, the first stream is the sciences. It's the students that are going to be doing pure sciences. So these are the kids who do biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, hardcore mathematics, further mathematics studies. And then in the B stream are the students that do things like accounting, economics, commercials basically, and business-related modules. And then the group C are the students that then do your art subjects, more specialized in history, geography, things like divinity, and the likes. So from the onset, you're sort of like channeled into different environments. And like I said to you, we were raised, get good grades, be good in school, get good grades. And unfortunately for me, I ended up in the A class. And I say unfortunately because I think I'll explain that a bit later. I ended up in the sciences class. And it was something that was very prestigious to be in the sciences class. You were the idiots that were walking around campus wearing lab coats, white lab coats, around high school grounds wearing lab coats. So it was something that everybody wanted to do. Then from there you write your O-level exams for us, which is governed by Cambridge if you're writing international board exams. And then you go into A-level. I did further sciences. So the whole idea, me going through this process, I wanted to become a doctor. That was the thinking, I wanted to become a doctor. And the only reason I wanted to become a doctor, because they get paid good money, they have comfortable lives, they drive nice cars. So it was just one of those things, you know, get good grades, get a good job, be a good employee. So it never happened. And then that's how I applied to apply for varsity to come to South Africa. And I had a full scholarship that was paid for my tuition and my accommodation and all those things. But it was because I was doing the sciences. So it was one of those STEM-related programs that sort of like advances you in science and technology type of thing. So that's how I found myself in South Africa. That was almost like 10 years ago. And I was doing my Bachelor's of Science. So I did my BSc majored in biochemistry, chemistry, and microbiology. The idea was to then, at some point, get into medical school and then become a doctor, have loads of money, and drive nice cars. That was the dream.
Okay, so Tav, when you were speaking, you told me such an interesting story of how you funded your first year studies in law. So Tav initially was a BSc student and therefore went on to study law. So tell us about that story.
All right. So, for scholarship for science, hefty stipends, like comfortable stipends. Let me say comfortable stipends. We had comfortable accommodations. Like everything was almost taken care of. So when I was doing my second year in my BSc, that's when I came to a realization and accept the fact that I actually do not enjoy doing science. I do it because it's something that I thought is cool and I'm good at it, but I don't have a passion for it. I don't actually enjoy doing it. Then at that point, I had to, so nothing about entrepreneurship has come to mind yet. This is just like a realization. So I can't be doing this my whole life. And I started investigating what else can I do other than BSc. So I then started chopping things down off the list, and then I eventually came down to two professions, accounting and law. And one of the things, silly as it may sound, one of the things that sort of like motivated to get to that point was because that time when I was in university, I was so much in love with wine. I loved coffee and I loved suits. So those two professions, they sort of like brought the things that are like foolish as it sounds, that I liked. So I ended up considering the two. Then in weighing what to do between accounting and law, I then realized that if I choose accounting, I have to forget about my science background because it's very difficult for me to merge the two qualifications. But however, if I choose law, I can then specialize in this thing called intellectual property law. And then in that instance, I can then start working in technology companies, in the protection of technologies. So an example of this is, if you think of a company like Coca-Cola or Clover, they produce the milk that we buy and drink every day. For them to protect the ideas or the processes that they use in making the milk and preserving the milk and stuff, this is just like a very crude example. They need to protect that kind of processes so that they gain in market dominance. And when they protect that, they stop everybody else from doing it. But then it's better for them to have a lawyer like me who understands the science, because I can take off my suit, put on a lab coat and go into the lab and do exactly what they're talking about because I have the background in biochemistry and microbiology. Then finish off doing the experiment, take off the lab coat, put on my suit and go back into the office and then do like serious legal work. So when you think about the two, you sort of like merging two industries. The same applies with pharmaceutics. When you need to draft a patent, for example, so a patent is essentially a document that allows you to protect your invention in a way, and it helps you to prevent other people from using your invention. So in that sense, you need somebody who has a technical background, which is why for you to qualify as a patent attorney, you need to have a technical qualification, which is either a science degree or an engineering degree. And then on top of that, you have a law degree. So you have a basic understanding. So when you sit down, when I was working at the University of the Free State, for example, when I sit down with a professor who was doing research and then he says to me, I spliced a gene and then I isolated this and I'm sort of like producing this kind of protein, I know exactly what he's talking about because I have that understanding, but then I also have the law degree, right? That's a very modern answer to get to your question. So that's where I found out like, law might actually be good. And let's be honest, law is cool, right? Right? That was like, nobody really appreciates So, because I was going to do that, there was no funding that was going to be available for me, so I had to fund myself to study law. So because I'm essentially finishing off a qualification, graduating and going back to first year. And that process to get money was hectic. So what I did at that point is, using some of the money that I was getting from the salary, the stipends or the allowances, I bought a car in Liverpool, in the United Kingdom. Have the car shipped from Liverpool to Walvis Bay. I finished writing exams, went to Walvis Bay, spent about 4 or 5 days there clearing the car. The car got cleared through customs, drove the car all the way back to Zim. Because I was going back to Zim, I'm coming as a returning resident because I finished my degree. I don't pay duty or tax as a returning citizen in the country. Then I brought the car in duty free, sold it. That's how I got money to pay for the first year. Then I came back to university to do my first year in law. So I think that could be like, if I can gauge it, that was like the first entrepreneurial venture that I entered into. Unbeknown to me though. Like I wasn't aware that was actually happening at that point. So yeah, that's sort of like the story. So that's how I started funding my LLB for the first year.
Isn't that such an interesting story? Like so many people sit at home once they can't fund their studies, and to think of such a creative idea, I don't even think that was possible, which shows that with entrepreneurship it requires a lot of creativity and out of the box thinking to think that he funded his first year studies through that. I'll keep that story for the longest time. My next question is, what drove you to become an entrepreneur? So with you trying to get funding and becoming an entrepreneur, then unknowingly to yourself, then what drove you to then become an entrepreneur? Because in second year, that's when you became an entrepreneur.
All right, so funny story. It was cheaper to buy the car in the UK than it was to ship it from UK to Walvis Bay. Insane. So I paid more money to ship the car than to buy the actual car. That's one of those things. So when I was doing my first year, that's when I had to start thinking about how am I going to fund my studies in the second year. At that point, I'm an international student, so I don't qualify for NSFAS. I don't qualify for any of the bursaries or funding that is available. I can't get a loan from the bank because I am super high risk, right? Which means I have to figure out how am I going to make money, to generate money to fund my studies. And then I looked at myself at that point and then I was like, what is the one thing that I have, the skill that I have that I can probably use to start and a living from? Because doing research, the price of being, like, I mean, what is the word I'm looking for? The best part of being that reading, right? I was like, research is the only thing that I can actually do. That is the only skill I have that I can actually sell. So what I started doing is I started doing research. And at the very beginning, to be quite honest, I wasn't even paid for it. I just go into research groups and then I see like, what kind of research are you doing? I'm interested, I want to start doing research. And I remember there's a lady, very sweet lady, Professor Munsi. She was doing research in traditional law and Twala, traditional marriages and stuff. That was like my very first research gig that I did. And I was reading about things that had nothing to do with what I was doing at that particular moment. But then, because I was so interested in that, and then the results that I was producing to her, they were quite good, then she started paying me for that. And so as student assistants, you get to a point where towards the end of the week or every second week, people submit their claim forms to claim the hours they've done research. Then I started doing that as well. But then as I was doing that kind of research, another research angle came out, the word started going out. Prof. Elmarie would be like, this guy is doing research, he's very good, right? And then I got a gig from the Vice Chancellor's office. And then I started doing research in economics. So remember, I have a background in science and a background in law. I don't know anything about economics, right? I started doing like research in economics, and I started doing research in economics, right? But it was just like a matter of reading, just going into the library, finding articles, finding stuff, and then just bringing it in, and then you sift through the information. So I was essentially using the skill that I had at that particular point to sort of like drive a living. And then in no time, I also got another gig with the international office. They were doing research on internationalization at home. Then I started doing research on the history of higher education in South Africa and how it has progressed, and the history of international education in South Africa. So those were like all research things that I was doing, and the money that I was getting from there was coming in, paying tuition for the next year. Then something very interesting happened. That's how I managed to pay into my second year. And as I was doing my second year, something very interesting happened. I was staying with a friend of mine, also from Zim, who was in a similar situation. He could not figure out where to get funding. There was nothing to figure out. We knew we couldn't get funding. But then we need to realize that, how can we? But then in the process, we went through a time when we were looking for bursaries and scholarships almost every single day, because it was becoming unbearable, because we had to work very long hours and we were studying full time. We needed to strike a balance, and we couldn't just get to that point. So what we decided to do is, and to his credit, he came up with this idea. And I was like, bro, do you know that there are so many bursaries that are available, but you never know which one applies to you unless you go through to it. And I was like, okay, good, fine, that's interesting. And he was doing computer science, by the way. He was doing his master's at this point in computing science. We started together in first year in biochemistry. So he proceeded to honors. I was doing my first year. When I was doing my second year, he was now doing his master's. All right. So we were like, we started together in 2009. And then he's like, what if we create a platform that is going to allow students to apply for bursaries, that will then allow, and then we started thinking around, toying around with that idea. And then what we did essentially was like, let's create a platform that we're going to collect all the bursaries that we can find, put them on a platform, create tags to allow them to match to students. And then once we have done that, we then build an app and then start selling the app, right? So that was the idea. That became the birth of SA Scholar as a product that we produced. So this is happening in our flat, in our little flat, in our hostel, in our room. So we collected all the bursaries. We then classified the bursaries. We put tags on bursaries to say age, because there are certain bursaries that are available for students that are between 21 and 30, right? Then race, there are only bursaries that are available for black children. There are bursaries that are available for white females, for example. There are bursaries that are available for, so there are various categories, right? So at the end of the day, what the platform we created would do is you would go, you create an account, you put in your name, you put in the university that you want to study at, and then you put in your gender, you put in your age, which was like your date of birth, which the system then calculates your age, and then you put your race, and then you determine which bursary do you want. Do you want a merit-based bursary, or do you just want like a financial need bursary? The minute you hit search, it will generate 5 results, but you are guaranteed that you qualify for all those 5 results. Instead of you going through a PDF document that is 300 bursaries, only to realize that you qualify for 2. And for you to realize which 2 you qualify for, you have to go through all 300. We sort of like streamlined the process. That became SA Scholar, all right? And then we launched SA Scholar 2013 officially. And then we created, at the date of launch, we had bursaries that were worth over R250,000,000. That is the bursary that we listed, over R250,000,000 with more than 2,000 entries on the system of bursaries that people could actually apply for. And that sort of like built like a very big system, and then it put us on the map. We were featured in national newspapers. We became little celebrities at our university, you know. We were on E-News, we were on SABC, we were on Guardian in the news articles and that kind of stuff. So that sort of like was the birth of SA Scholar. There was a need, we were looking for money, but we couldn't find money. But then we knew that we could help other people find money, and then them finding money would make us money. You get the line of thinking that was happening at that moment. So that's what happened. That's how SA Scholar came into being. and we ran with it for a couple of years.
Okay, tough. So you were telling us now how you were sustaining yourself financially. This is you away from Zim, now you're in South Africa. This is your entrepreneurial journey, like starting. And now I want you to tell us about all the business which you started, because that SA Scholar wasn't the only business you started. And tell us what happened with those businesses.
I like SA Scholar because it was very successful, you know. But the very first one that we started was Afro Mavericks. So Afro Mavericks, the idea behind Afro Mavericks, which is still a very good idea, was to create, so the idea was taken, the name was taken from Afro-Africans, and then Mavericks, like people like pioneers or pioneers, like people think outside the box type of thing. So we wanted to create viable African solutions for African problems. That was the concept, using technology. So we had a platform that we created that would, problems will be identified, they were posted onto the platform, and then we'll then try and figure out how to create solutions of the problems that we're having, right, without necessarily getting people to come from wherever they come from. So the idea behind the project was to create a business that is going to solve problems without borders, if you will. So if you're in Kenya and then there's a problem in Kenya, you put the problem on the platform. Then guys in South Africa can actually look and then see, because probably they've gone through something similar, they can then suggest to say, wait a minute, we've done this like this and it worked up to this point. Then somebody in Uganda will then come and then say, yeah, but from here you need to take it from this. That was the concept behind, that is still the concept behind Afro Mavericks. But it didn't work out very well quite quickly because, one, the infrastructure that we needed for us to be able to sustain and run that kind of venture in terms of the ICT space, like the cloud computing and that kind of stuff, we simply didn't have the capacity to do that. And we didn't have funding. We were funding these were ideas that were coming to us like in our room. So we saw there's a huge need, but there is no way for us to be able to sort of like go forward and execute the project, if you will. Because what we needed was to create a platform that was going to be very solid, that would allow people from wherever they are on the continent, or even abroad, to come and help with African solutions, but in a very, so it's sort of like a sophisticated think tank, if you will, but for Africans, by Africans to solve African problems. So the biggest thing that stopped us there was limitation of funding, and we couldn't grow it. And the second one that was involved in it was sort of like a writing and editing kind of gig. So we wanted to do it like twofold. The first one was to be producing articles that are going to be talking about issues that relate to Africa and development of Africa. That was one of the things that we were quite passionate about at that particular point. And then the second one was to offer like a service. So the idea was we offer a service to people where we can do like proofreading and concept drafting and stuff, and they pay us, and then that part will sustain the other side of the business, which was not going to be generating any income. So the idea was this side, this arm of the business is going to be invoicing, but whatever proceeds are coming from there, some of the money is supposed to sustain this sort of like pro bono, for lack of a better word, business that we're going to be running. But the idea was to develop African intellectuals and African thinkers, not necessarily within the context of the university. We wanted to create something that is outside of the university, because universities are largely regulated, and there are many progressing out of those on that knowledge and expertise simply because they're. So that was the idea of that. That didn't work quite well. Then SA Scholar came through, and then we ran with that for a time. encountered another problem with SS Scholar, that the majority of the people that were going to make use of our service did not have access to banking facilities. Because if your business is based on an app, it means you're going to put an app on an app store and you expect people to buy an app on an app store. But for you to buy an app on an app store, you need to have an engrossed credit or check card. Then you can enter your details and then you buy. But the majority of the people at that point, we're looking at close to 88% of the people have no access to formal banking structures. So how do you sell a product to them when they can't even buy the product? So we have to think about re-commercialization of the product. We have to repivot and rethink in real time at that particular point to say, we're not going to make money out of this because there is a great need, but people are not going to be able to access the service that we offer. So we're going to make this thing for free. And that would, imagine, $1,000 in the first week. And the commercialization strategy that was going to come out of there was to say, we are going to create advertising revenue. That's how we're going to get money. So with the SA Scholar, the primary app, and then the second one was the SA Scholar community app. The community app will then go to schools, and then we identify schools where children need to apply for bursaries. Then we go to corporate companies, and then we say to the corporates, then we say, we have this product, we have identified the school that needs, we are going to allow the school to use this license for a week or for 2 weeks. We need you to buy a license for the school. That was the second monetization project that we have on the SS Scholar app. And industry was buying into it. And we created an offline version that you could use. You need to connect it every now and again so that you download the latest information, because bursaries will be uploaded every single time when we get new bursaries. And believe you me, it was a 2-man band when it actually started. I was busy gathering bursaries, anything that I can get. He was developing the system on the other side. So he created the rudimentary system like a database, just enter information on one end. As he was developing the app, I'm just collecting bursaries and stuff. So information was sort of like in real time updated. So we needed people to have access to that.
You know, what you find is with us entrepreneurs, you expect to go into business and to start your business and everything to succeed, and because you have such a great idea and everything seems like it's going to work out, you've got excited people around you, not people who really have knowledge on what you're doing, but excited people who are happy for you and who are just telling you to go for it. So it's always so important to be around entrepreneurs and around people who tell you like, listen, these are the failures that I experienced, and through these failures, then we want to know what were your biggest challenges. You faced these different obstacles along the way. What would you say was your biggest challenge of them all?
In our case, going back to the days when we were doing SS Scholar, I think the biggest challenge was, first of all, it was funding. So, because whatever we did up to a point where we could not run it any further by ourselves. We needed extra capacity. We needed extra resources because we were just stretched too thin. So you can imagine, I was still doing my research work on the side. I'm studying on a full-time basis a law degree, and I'm working on this project, on this baby, and he's doing his master's. He's working on several other projects and this project as well. And his name is Blessing. And at some point, we then got somebody else, another friend of ours, Kerwin. Kerwin came onto the platform. And Kerwin, he was a psychology major. That was something that was very interesting about our team. So I was legal and science. He was computing science. Then Kerwin came, he was a psychology major. He was reading for his master's as well at that particular point. Then he had to take sort of like care of the marketing side of the business. But the biggest challenge that we had was funding, and I would like to say, cautiously so, because my friends would say it wasn't poor decision making, it was a great learning curve. Apparently, it matters how you coin things. Sometimes I think we made decisions that were not particularly great, but then they say they were like great learning curves for us. So funding was the biggest thing. And we had a challenge because we were particularly foreign students in South Africa on limited visas. So we could not go to banks to get funding, to get a loan, to push things. No matter how good the business looked, we could not go to a bank. It was very difficult for us to get funding from any of the funding instruments that were available. And I think I did tell you about the blunder we made with TIA. Right. That was one of our epic blunders that we did. We came to a point where we had to apply for funding, to get more funding. And we spoke to a group of, we went to the university's technology transfer office and then we expressed our idea. And they said, oh, this idea is very great, it's amazing. We need to, let's see if we can apply for funding for you. So there's an organization or an agency of the government that's called Technology Innovation and Agency, TIA. That is, I think they're based in Cape Town or something like that. They fund innovative, novel ideas that are coming out of universities and stuff. The problem with that was, not a problem, the challenge was, TIA is publicly funded. By that I mean it's taxpayers' money. They get money from the government and then they're supposed to invest that money, right? And if the money is coming from the government, they need to use the money, they're expected to practice due diligence in all of these things. And in the projects that they sponsor, the government has to be the owner of the project, directly or indirectly, right? Because they need control, which makes sense. If you come to think about it, it makes sense because we are all paying tax, right? It's not fair for them to take all our taxpayers' money and then come and give it to me to do a business and then run away with the business. Well, when you really come to think about it in that sense, it makes sense. But when somebody says the university or the government is taking my idea, it sounds very sour when it comes. But when you think on it on the basis of logic and how things are, it's not going to fly. So we had a meeting, and funny enough, the person who sat in the meeting, who was sort of like who was evaluating our application, is now my boss at the new place that I'm sort of like involved in at the moment. So we sat there, and then they discussed, and then it's like, we can give you funding. You can apply for funding. It's not guaranteed. It's a competitive process. Everybody brings in their idea. The ideas are sifted. They test the value proposition. They look at the business case. If it is viable, they will fund it. So there was opportunity to get funding for up to 400,000 rand, which is what we needed, because in our estimation, we needed about 300 or so to upscale to the next level where we're going to make this thing quite big. We sat there in that meeting, and then they told us about all these things. And then at the end, they said, but the IP needs to belong to the university or to another institution that is owned by the government, because you're going to be funded by public money. At that point, we didn't even think, we didn't even hesitate. We said, no, we're not going to do that. This is our IP, we are going back with the IP. We had like, I think in my opinion, at this point, looking in hindsight, I think we were ill-advised, or we were a bit ignorant about how things actually work. So we walked away with our IP, with our technology, without money, whereas there was an opportunity for us to get 400,000 rand, right? And if we had, this is my theory, and my friends sometimes, they don't agree with me fully. If we had received the 400,000 rand, I think we would have upscaled the business to a level where it was going to be valued way more than 400,000 rand. It could have gone easily, because looking at the number and the statistics that we're working with, we're estimating that there are almost 1 million students every year. Think about it, there are 23 universities in South Africa. Each university has plus or minus 20,000. I mean, from 20,000 going upwards, right? That is a lot of students that you're talking about. And if you multiply it, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, right? These are people that are only using the platform. and then you start generating revenue stream. It could easily, by our estimation, it could easily go into millions, right? And this is my argument, and you're open to disagree with me. We would have been better off having assigned our IP over to the university and get the 400,000 and upscale the business to a 20 million rand business, for example, and then we get 40% of 20 million than us walking away with 0 rand and 100% of our IP. Do you see what I mean? So I think at that point we made a blunder. I think that was a decision that we did not think thoroughly. But I think we were still young, and as my friend would say, it was a great learning curve. Because if you go anywhere else to an investor, you have a business, you have a solid business plan, nobody's just going to give you the money. They give you money, then they take equity, right? But why we were expecting it to be different with the university, I don't know why. I still can't explain why, but I think for us that was a bit of a mistake we did. Yeah.
Okay, so now Taf,
Yeah.
you remember all the challenges now you faced.
Yeah.
Now what I want to know is what were the lessons learned from the challenges? Because as challenges you must learn.
Right.
And we as wise people, we don't learn from only our own mistakes, but from other people's mistakes. So now we want to know your mistakes so we can learn from your mistakes.
So I guess the first one of the lessons that I learned is you can't have it both ways. Unless you do something that is insanely good. You can't have it both ways. You can't have 100% ownership of your business or a company if you're going to be asking for funding from external people. You can't have 100% and then get their money. It doesn't work like that. I think for me that was sort of like the greatest lesson I had. And more than anything else, it was the fact that we need to consult people who know. Because the decision of us not accepting funding in exchange for equity or giving over our IP, as it were, I think that decision was made within our hostel with a bunch of broke friends who didn't have any experience in business, who were just drinking booze at that particular point, and we didn't have the full understanding of how things actually work in the real world. So for us, I think we have come to a point where if you need expert opinion, go to experts. Rather spend that extra buck and pay somebody to do a proper analysis. I mean, here's the second thing that I'm going to talk about with regards to SS Scholar as well. We walked away with our IP, right? We have this product, and then we're now scavenging, trying to keep it pushing. But then 2014, thereabout, that's where the Fees Must Fall movement started. Then there's toying everywhere. So if you think about SS Scholar, our entire business case is built on people looking for bursaries. That is the basis of our business case. People need money, somebody has money, somebody's giving people money. But if fees has fallen, no one is going to need bursaries. So our entire business has collapsed. So we did a risk assessment at that point, a poor risk assessment, as it were. And we did not, again, consult experts. We just dashed into conclusions and we got rid of the business, right? But fees did not fall, or has not fallen. Or if it did, people are still looking for bursaries. The opportunity is still there. So we did a risk assessment based on fear and lack of understanding of how things actually work in the broader sense of things in terms of how the economies work. Was fees must fall, fees is going to fall. Is this thing going to be sustainable? Is it going to work? How is it going to work? So we came in at a time when it was very topical and it was very great. But we did not have the knowledge, and we were broke. We were just trying to survive to see the next day. And I think that is also something that is quite valuable. Had we consulted people that had given us expert advice, and I mean, before we get even there, had we assigned over our IP to TIA or to whoever, had we received funding from TIA, which was not guaranteed, but let's just make it clear. But if we had gone through the process and been found successful, the handling of IP or the success of the business would not only be ours, but also them, because they are investing public funds into them, would have had access to several more resources, and people would have done a better research assessment than we did, and would have received probably better guidance, and probably the business would still be running. But that's unfortunately not happen, and here we are. So, seek expert advice. Don't be afraid to try new things. And the other thing that you also need to realize, and I hope this doesn't come out as insensitive, but if a problem doesn't, if there is a problem, or if there is a situation that doesn't affect you or benefit you directly, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't build an opportunity out of it. Do you get what I mean? We could not get bursaries. So we're helping everybody else to get bursaries. But we ourselves did not qualify for any of the bursaries that we were using. But we built a solid business case of it. So it's how you see things, how you identify opportunities, and how you explore them, I suppose.
Sure, lessons learned. Okay, now I want to know, we want to know what took place just before you started Kachara Inc. So, how did you get there from now, learning from all these failures to then getting to establishing Kachara Inc.?
All right, so finished university, and this is now 2015, completed, and I both my qualifications, I'm not looking for a job, but then the job is not happening, and qualified as I was, you would think it would be easy for you to get a job, but it wasn't. So that's when I sort of like fell back onto the backup plan that I'd already seen like a couple of years earlier to say, what is it that I have that I can use to make money? How can I commercialize myself? How can I sell myself to generate an income for myself? And the thing that I identified was that I have this unique skill and unique knowledge in terms of intellectual property and the knowledge in intellectual property law, which most people actually don't know what it is or they don't understand how it works. I mean, you get people who come up to you and they say they have an idea, they're thinking of a project and they want to patent it, but you can't really patent it, right? So I then decided like, okay, I'm going to establish myself to offer a professional service. But then the thing with professional services, you need credentials. So if you come here and you say you're offering accounting services, that's the example that I always use. If you come here and then you say you're offering accounting services, people want to know, do you have an accounting degree, or have you done, are you a chartered accountant, for example? They need to understand that before you go. So I spent considerable amount of time and money in studying and getting professional qualification and certification in terms of intellectual property. So at that point I was doing things with WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization based in Geneva. I was writing the patent examination boards, which are regulated by the government, the DTI. I joined professional boards like the South African Institute of Intellectual Property Lawyers, and get into that space where I actually get to interact and learn more and get certificates and get like a deeper understanding of how things actually work. And one of the things that also happened is I got fortunate enough to be employed within the university, where I was dealing specifically with intellectual property law and doing technology transfer. So I think that sort of like built me up, and it buffed me to become confident in giving this sort of like service that I offer. But one of the key things that I also identified was there was a very open market in Bloemfontein. Because I don't know if you know this, there is not even a single law firm in Bloemfontein that deals with intellectual property. Because it's a very specialized skill set that you need. So if any of the lawyers in Bloemfontein say they do intellectual property, they actually don't. They second it to guys in Pretoria, the guys in Joburg, to guys in Cape Town. So they will take instructions from you to file a trademark, for example. Then they will instruct attorneys in Johannesburg to file a trademark because they understand how something works. Which is why, if you come to think about it, if you thought, why does it cost you to, if you want to try and file a trademark from Bloemfontein using any of the local firms, why would it cost you about 5,000 to 6,000, 7,000 rand for you to do that? Right? It's because they are taking instructions from you and then they instruct somebody else whether they need to put on their markup, you know, that kind of thing. So it's sort of like they're essentially agreement to give somebody else to instruct somebody else to do the work. So I identify that there is a huge gap in the market in Bloemfontein. There is nobody who's doing these things. And then I get into this space. So I wrote up saying I do intellectual property law. I file trademarks, I register designs, I advise on issues related to copyright law and patents. I can advise what kind of strategy do you need to use. And I think it's probably something that we're probably going to talk in a minute. He made mention, Chabo made mention of the fact of what actually is intellectual property and how does it help people, right? So I'm coming in, which is another lesson that I learned. I'm coming in saying to people, you have a business, I can register a trademark, right? But then people were looking with blank faces like, huh? I'm like, what is a trademark? Why do I need a trademark? Do you understand? So at that particular point, I then realized that the whole premise of my business is a little bit misconstrued. I need to re-pivot, right? I need to start by doing workshops and educate people on what is intellectual property. Why do you need intellectual property? How is it relevant in your business as a small business person? How can you use it as a small business person? How can you leverage intellectual property to develop further in your business? Then only when I've done that, when you know and you understand what IP is, then you might then at that point decide, I think I might need one of those things. And then that becomes the secondary aspect of the business. So now, for the last year or so, the bulk of the work that I have been doing, I do file trademarks and consult on IP issues, but the majority of the work that I'm doing is essentially creating awareness on what is IP, why do you need IP, and why is it relevant when it comes to the knowledge economy when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution. Why is it something that's quite essential? So those are the things that I've done in starting my business, getting professional certification and qualifications, and then also getting to start servicing the local market.
Cool. So now we know the background, now we know the different challenges along the way, we know what just happened just before Kachara Inc. Now we can find out what your company is all about. What do you do? How can you help us?
Okay, so what I do essentially is deal with intellectual property, right? So intellectual property in its sense is sort of like, it's the creation of the mind, right? You come up with an idea and then you execute the idea. That's what intellectual property is. And there are different kinds of intellectual property, right? You have patents, you have designs, you have copyrights, you have trademarks, you have trade secrets, you have know-how, you have patent builders' rights. So it varies from one spectrum to the other. And what my business is essentially is to say, if you have a business, how do you make yourself unique on the market? How do you differentiate the goods and services that you're offering to that of everybody else around? Do you have a trademark protected? And I must also just say this. There are some clients that in my in my advice, I would probably say it's good to have a trademark, but I don't think now is the right time to rather focus on this, or rather do this right. And so that is essentially the basics of what I do. And I create environment and synergies for you to be able to use various pieces of technologies that are not necessarily available to you without you knowing. What I mean by that is, take patents for example. There is nothing as a worldwide patent. You don't get an international patent. There is nothing like that. But it's a very common misunderstanding that people have. So for patents, for you to get a patent, you need to file a patent in each and every country that you need to do business in, right? So if you come up with an invention, and then you have an idea, and then you figure out where is going to be the possible. So this is the kind of work that I do. If you have an invention, and then you say, I want to patent it, it's quite an expensive process. So what I do is, what is the possible commercial value of this thing, firstly, right? How can you, what are the revenue streams that you're going to create using this? Is there a market for it? Because it's one thing to have an idea, it's one thing to have an idea that is going to sell in the market, right? And so I do all that kind of analysis, and then I can say to you, it might not be necessary, especially if you want to just practice in South Africa. You can go ahead and do it. But then for you to get a patent, your thing has to be new, it has to be inventive. Is it new, is it inventive? If it is not, how can we work around it? Okay, so some of the work that I'm doing with SMMEs is to say that you have a business, you are producing some stuff. For example, let's say you're producing, for argument's sake, you're producing sugar, right? In Bloemfontein, in South Africa. The processes that you are using, how efficient are they? That's the first thing that we need to look into. If they are not very efficient, let's look for, so we do what we call patent landscaping, right? We take a piece of technology or the area that you're working in, and then I do a scan globally to find out where else has something like this been done and what have they done. And then I find a piece of, a set of patents, for example. And then I look, did these patents, were they filed in South Africa, are they protected in South Africa? And then in most cases you find no, right? Then what do? In South Africa, you are free to use that technology because it's not protected. The owner of the technology has no right to come and sue you in South Africa if they've not found a patent in South Africa. So that is the kind of knowledge that I bring. Like, there are several pieces of technologies that are out there that you can access. Some of the technologies, you can't then just use the patent as is because there is know-how that goes with the patent. So it's one thing for you to have a patent, but to know how to actually practice the invention is a different thing. I then get into that process of negotiating. How can you then get the necessary know-how? So in as much as the patent is not registered in South Africa, but then you can reach out to the person who owns the patent, and then you say, I would like to use the technology, and then they give you how to use it. Then you have to get into a contractual agreement that you are going to be paid a certain amount of royalty over a certain period of time, that kind of thing. You think of things that is like simple as trademarks, for example. We just know that trademark, set up right? It's a trademark, right? But what most people do not realize is that trademarks, they are categorized or classified into 45 different classes. Okay. 1 to 35 classes, they deal with goods, and then 36 to 45, they deal with services. So if you want to get protection in whatever you are doing, you need to file in all the classes that apply to you. I'll use BMW as an example. BMW, they make motor vehicles. There is a class that protects motor vehicles. Right? Let's say it's class number 1. Then they do apparel, clothing. That is like the BMW logo, the motorsport trademark logo. They don't have a basis to come to me to say we are infringing on our trademark because it was not registered in that class. But most people don't know this. Do you know what I mean? I mean, BMW, they're a huge brand, they're a huge muscle. They will probably get you on their goodwill. So they can argue to say, this person is using our good name to do business. They won't come and say you are infringing on trademark because they did not file a trademark in that particular class. But that is BMW. But if you're a small startup business, and then you start to building your reputation and stuff, and then somebody will then just doing the same thing, you technically, if you do not file in that particular class, you have no legal right to stop them from doing that. Okay? And even if you were to go and litigate that case, it's going to cost you a whole lot of money for you to do that. So what I do is I come in and I sit down and I look at the business and the processes and I say, what could be beneficial for you in the kind of business? This is one of these are ABC things that you're doing. Let's get protection in class A, class B, class C, so that we know that you are covered in these areas. And if anybody else comes and try and do a phone call thing with your brand, they're not going to mess up with you. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like that kind of understanding and the knowledge that I'm creating and the value that I'm bringing to small businesses. And I'm pivoting myself to focus primarily on entrepreneurs and small businesses to say, how can we participate and compete? Because if you think about it, think about companies and countries like Japan, Singapore, South Korea, right? They are very small countries. They don't have natural resources the way we do, but they have some of the highest GDPs in the world. Why is that? It's because of the intellectual assets that they have, which then goes into the knowledge economy. So the industrial revolution that we're moving into, the 4 IR, if you accept it for it to be happening right now, it's mostly based on intellectual creativity. How do you create knowledge and protect that knowledge to stop everybody else from using it, right? We always talk about Nokia. Nokia fell very hard from the radar. But Nokia is one of the companies that's still making a whole lot of money. Because any phone that you think of is built on Nokia's technology. It's Nokia's patents, basically. And you can't use that technology without paying a royalty to Nokia. So in as much as they're not a big player within the telephone, like the devices themselves, they're still a huge player in research. So they are focusing most of their time in research. And now they're moving into cloud computing and artificial intelligence and all those kind of things. It's because they're seeing the value in the intellectual. If Nokia did not have the patents they have, I bet you they would have sunk when iPhone came out and BlackBerry. They would not have survived that. The only thing that kept them afloat was the patents that kept on generating revenue, that helped them to sustain, and then now they're finding themselves, they're making nice moves now. You know, it's way different. Yeah, no, that was. But the point I'm saying is, if they didn't have patents, they would not have survived the wave that came with the iPhone and BlackBerry. And because of their patents, iPhone and BlackBerry and Samsung, they built all the technologies that Nokia had. And now they're focused more on research. So what I'm doing is, how can we help people to create knowledge? That's first of all. And once we've created knowledge, or if we can't create knowledge, how can we use existing knowledge to benefit and enhance the business of the small businesses? Yeah. So in a way, that is the long and short story of what I'm doing. That is the core of my business. But I also do things like contracting, like a normal legal contracting, like specifically for startups. Like how do you file for, you want to get into a subcontracting agreement. So it's those things that comes within being in a territory. But the bulk of my work is focusing on how can you access intellectual property assets and how can you use them to enhance your service offering and improve your competitive advantage on the market. Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be my last question, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys to ask, you said to ask Kachara, thinking about this company now, to ask tough questions that you would like to know about intellectual property or stuff on your own businesses. So Taf, what would you say you are doing differently or uniquely in comparison comparison to other intellectual property consulting companies that are around?
I'm tempted to say nothing because in Bloemfontein there are no other competing intellectual property consulting firms. So you will find that my competition, if you can call it that, they're all based in Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, and Durban. And it's the big firms. So it's the Adams and Adams, it's the Spoor and Fishers, it's the Kish, it's the Smith, and yeah. So it's the big guns really, the hand in hand, you know. So I think what I do differently is I don't have big fancy buildings to pay rentals for. So my rates are very, very user-friendly to small IT firms, you know, to small upcoming entrepreneurs. So I charge, for example, if you think of trademark filing, I charge a fraction of what they will charge you, you know, almost at that. And my business is built on the premise that I want to create a long relationship with clients. So I have put mechanisms in place because I understand that money, it's very difficult to come by money because I've been through the journey where I needed money as a small business and you couldn't just get money. So I have things like flexible paying plans. You come in and then I do your work, and then as the money rolls in over a certain number of months, then you pay me. I'm very comfortable in doing that. So if we can cover my basic costs, right, in terms of me procuring your IP per se, and then allow for you to start on the process of doing your business and approaching people if you need to, and having this basic protection in a way, then you and I, we can always, you know, work together continuously. My thinking or my philosophy in our firm is to say that we want to create lasting relationships. So we just don't want to do your IP, but we want to also help you develop your business in terms of when you talk about contracting, strategy in terms of IP. How do you work together on doing that? So the main differentiating factor for me is probably very user-friendly pricing, and I think supporting that understanding where the small businesses are coming from.